The organization should have a management information system or some other mechanism where all project information is collected and maintained. Such a mechanism, if kept accurate and up to date, can make data verification and validation easier by allowing the organization to track costs, risks, etc. over time. After each project's cost, risk, and benefit information has been examined and validated, all of the projects should be compared against some common decision criteria in order to weigh the relative merits of the projects and develop a prioritized listing of projects. The criteria used for assessing and ranking projects should consist of elements related to three essential areas: benefits, costs, and risks. Often organizations will establish broad categories related to these three areas and then develop more specific sub-elements that come under each broad category. For example, an organization may establish risk as a categorical heading and then include schedule risks, cost sensitivity, technical risks, organizational risks, and risks if the project is not undertaken as sub-elements under the risk heading. Different organizations will break these broad categories and sub-elements out in different ways. For instance, some organizations may include a project's costs as one of several factors under risk, while others break project costs out as a separate category. The organization may assign weights to each of the broad categories, as well as any sub-elements related to each category, in order to help prioritize those factors that the organization considers to be the most significant. For example, a company that has limited experience developing systems may give technical risk a greater weight than projected cost. The weighting schema that the organization establishes should be defined and documented. Such documentation is even more important if different weighting approaches are used for different kinds of projects: operational, infrastructure, applications development projects, etc. To provide senior managers with an understanding of the relative costs, risks, and benefits of each project compared to the other projects, the organization may develop a scoring model or decision support tool. Such a tool compares the costs, benefits, and risks of each project against the cost, benefit, and risk criteria and assigns a score for each factor. The scores that the project receives for each factor are then added up to produce a cumulative score that establishes the project's relative worth and allows comparison against all other projects. The criteria for comparing and ranking projects should be used uniformly across the organization, that is, office, division, or bureau-level decisions should be made using a set of criteria that are similar to criteria used for agency or department-level decisions. Although different levels of the organization may use additional criteria, the organization should have a set of minimum criteria that are used enterprise-wide. Using some common decision criteria provides greater assurance that the organization is selecting projects consistently and helps to avoid apples versus oranges project comparison problems. There should also be incentives to ensure compliance with the process and to dissuade gamesmanship. The organization should identify who is responsible for enforcing the process, and there should be explicit consequences for non-compliance. The purpose of key questions is to evaluate the organization's processes for analyzing and prioritizing projects, not to assess how well the analysis and prioritization are being done. Does the organization require that the information and data submitted with funding proposals to be validated? Accuracy, reliability, completeness. Does the process stipulate who is responsible for performing this validation? Sponsor, project team, independent validation and verification teams, auditors, inspector general, etc. Does the process stipulate where exceptions to validation are permitted? If exceptions are allowed, are other clearly defined conditions required to be met? Does the organization have an established, Documented process for comparing and ranking all proposed IT-related funding. Has the organization defined explicit criteria that will be used to help compare and rank projects? Do these criteria include cost, risk, and benefit elements, for example, benefit/cost ratios, anticipated or actual impact on mission improvement priorities, risks versus benefits, etc.? Do the criteria include both quantitative and qualitative criteria, for example, return on investment calculations, risk modeling scores, capability assessments, alignment with critical needs, etc.? Are the decision criteria weighted? If scoring weights are attached to different items for management consideration, are these clearly defined and understood by participants? Has management consensus been established on use of the weighting scheme? Are these weights being applied consistently to all project proposals? If not, has the organization established different weighting schemas for different project types? Does the process explain how the decision criteria are to be applied? If the organization uses a scoring model or decision support tool associated with the decision criteria to help measure the relative costs, benefits, and risks of each project, are the scoring elements precisely defined and differentiated? Is the process for analyzing and comparing IT projects required throughout the organization, regardless of where actual funding decisions/approvals are made? Does the process include incentives or disincentives to ensure compliance? Are roles and responsibilities for enforcing the process defined? Does the organization require that management evaluations, as well as scoring, ranking, and prioritization results be documented either manually or through the use of automated applications such as a decision support tool? Does the organization require that this information, together with approved project data on cost, schedule, and performance, be tracked at an aggregate level? At a project level, does the organization require that this information be entered into a recognized management information system? Does it require the data to be maintained in a uniform fashion?